Hello everyone, it's Mr. Shaver again, another demonstration for you. Today we're going to be talking about making coils. If you ever played with Play-Doh or clay before, there's a good chance you kind of rolled the clay out for fun and made what we call a coil. Coils are really useful for lots of things. You can use them to build, you can use them decoratively, you can use them to make handles, etc. So they're really versatile. So I'm going to go over some really simple ways to use a coil, but remember there's lots of other things you can do with them. A couple examples I have, this is a basic cylinder a student made, really nice painting job on it. They started with a pinch pot and then they added coils to build up the sides. Notice it goes out a little bit. They were able to do that with coils. We have done in the past, I showed this example before, but we've done amphora vessels. This is almost all coil built, with a couple pinch pots on either side to get that shape, but you can also do other things with it. This is a piece I made a while ago for fun. You can do stuff that's really organic and you can change the form a lot using coils. You can use them decoratively. Here's a plate that I made, so I use the coils as decoration. And then you can also, like I said, you can use them to do little handles and stuff. They also come in handy for using when you're putting two slabs together to hold them up. You can use them in sculpture, so again, really useful. So I've got a bunch of clay here. I'm going to make some coils and I'm going to add them on to a pinch pot that I made a little while ago. I'll show you how that works as well. But first, when you start a coil, don't just take a big ball of clay and then start trying to roll it out, okay? You want to try to squeeze the clay a bit and form it by hand. This is kind of what we did when we built slabs, is you did a lot of it by hand. You use the rolling pin at the end. With the coils, same idea. Do a lot of it by hand before you start rolling it. So I'm going to change the camera angle so you can see what I'm doing. Now, this is something that's easier said than done. I've done a bunch of coils, so it's a little easier for me, but I've got a couple tips for you. So when you start to roll out your coil, I like to think of it as you're trying to be a slow DJ. Like you're scratching the record, but you're doing it slow. Or you can think about it, you're trying to land an airplane, okay? You're not gonna go straight, you're gonna arc your hand a little bit, all right? I like to keep my fingers in touch with the table while I'm rolling, so I'm not getting my fingertips on it. I'm using this flat part of my hand. If you angle it, you get a nice flat area to roll your coil with. So I'm gonna start rolling. I'm gonna use both hands. Sometimes I'll use one, but you see how my fingers are still touching the table? You can hear it. I'm just going back and forth. I like to make sure that my area that I'm rolling in is nice and clean, so you're not picking up little particles of clay that could end up in your coil. And again, as always, we're kind of using this as the guide. You don't need to go much thinner than this unless you're doing it as some sort of decoration or something. You don't want to go too much thicker than this because, again, we want to make sure the moisture can get out. It also depends on where you're putting it. If you're building up a vessel, if you're putting it near the top, like on this one, this coil is a little bit thinner than some of the coils they put on the bottom, because structurally you can get thinner as you go up. So again, I'm trying to just go for something like this, right? I'm rolling back and forth, nice and even, not too fast. And then this is a pretty good looking coil. I can use this to build with, all right? So I'm gonna do this on top and I'm gonna do one more coil for you. If you're trying to save yourself a little time, especially if you're building something that kind of has straight sides to it, you can do a double coil. It's a little bit of a cheat, but it works. So I'll show you that. So basically you're going to do the same thing you would do. This gives me an opportunity to show you how to start these again. So again, I'm just kind of squeezing the clay so that I can start the coil. Okay. I'll squeeze it out till it's like a little bit thicker than my thumb kind of thing. And then when I roll it out, I'm thinking double this or double this. Okay, so I'm not going to make it too thin. And once I have it about double what I normally would want, then I can flatten it out. I'm going to pat it on one side, give it a little smooth out, pat it on the other side, smooth it out, and I can do that a couple times if I need to. Getting it nice and even. That's like 2 coils for the price of 1. That doesn't work great, especially if you're trying to build something like this. But if you're trying to do a bigger vessel where the sides aren't super crazy, the double coil can save you some time. So let me show you how you'd add it on to something. So I've trimmed this pinch pot, all right, so the top is pretty flat. I made this a couple days ago, so it's a little harder, but it's still pretty wet. It's good to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to score and slip the coils on. We don't want cracks later on in our vessels or whatever it is you're making, so you want to make sure you score and slip. Now you can use, a needle tool. That's going to take you a little bit longer to do. You can use these kind of spiked ribs. Those are pretty nice. I like to use a fork. That's what I do. So I got my slip nearby. So what I'm going to do with my pinch pot is I'm going to score it. Just going to turn it and make lots of texture. All right, don't worry about getting it on the outside edge. We're going to be smoothing some stuff out later as well. Then on my coil, I'm going to test and make sure it's long enough to go around. I for sure have enough coil to go all the way around. Okay. So I'm going to score the coil as well. So I'm just going to go texture out one way, diagonal, texture out, coming back. And that's going to help me make sure that it all sticks together. Okay. So now I'm going to add my slip to my pinch pot. And I'm going to bring this a little closer and put it down so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. I'm adding the slip. Remember, when you're adding the slip for scoring and slipping, you don't want to smooth out your texture. You're just adding the glue in. Then I'm going to add it to my coil. Now you can use, brushes, etc., for slip, but I just get my hands dirty. Okay, now I'm going to add the coil to the pinch pot. So I'm kind of holding it up, and as I go around, I'm going to press it down just lightly so that it doesn't slip off. Trying to make sure the textured part is on there. All right, now here's the important part about adding these. I'm going to cut off some of this extra so I don't have to hold it up. But right here where these two coils are meeting, here's a nice tip. You want to cut at an angle so that they come together like this. If they come together like this, it takes a little extra smoothing. But if I cut at a little bit of an angle, I cut off this extra here. So I got an angle right there, right? I'm going to do the same thing where it overlaps right there. And now those two coils overlap and they come together really nice. Nice little diagonal cut, okay? And then you can pat it down a little bit, make sure it's on there. The classic move you'll see a lot of people do is you can just use your finger to smooth this out. But I tend to work a little bit faster. I'll use a popsicle stick. Love using a popsicle stick. And I'm going to use my slip. And I'm going to put my popsicle stick in the slip so it's a little bit wet. And I'm going to drag down at kind of an angle. So I'm going to take this coil and smooth it out going down towards the pinch pot. Now you can go up too, but going down allows you to fill in that crease or the joint where the coil meets the pinch pot. Sorry, I was in the camera there. So I'm building up a little bit. You can see I'm actually scraping the clay. I'm not just smoothing it out. I'm scraping the clay down. Now, if you pull up, you got to make sure you have a thumb on top, because if you pull up, you might pull the coils apart. That's why I like to go down and make sure I'm not pulling anything apart. There we go, all the way around. Now, don't worry about it being super smooth right now until you get it all the way built up to where you want it to be, right? Because you're going to have to do some details later. Right now, we're just building up. Now, especially if you're going to see the inside of the vessel, you want to score and smooth or smooth out the inside. And what I will do, in this case, it's kind of hard to go down inside the vessel. So what I will do is I'll make sure I have my thumb kind of on top of where I'm smoothing it, and then I'll drag up. So again, same motion. And once in a while, kind of go side to side and kind of dragging the clay. So I'm kind of going up at a diagonal and getting some of that clay in to that joint area so it looks nice and smooth, and I know it's not going to fall apart on me later on. Okay? So it looks pretty good. Now, if you're building something like this, right, I'm not super worried about the inside of this. No one's seen the inside of this really at all. But especially if you're going to see the inside, make sure you're smoothing it out unless you want that look, unless you want to be able to see those lines. If you like those lines, decoratively, like what I did on this plate here, keep them, right? Okay, now I have this big flat coil I can use. I like to sometimes take the coil and flatten out the areas I'm going to be adding. And again, I'm going to score and slip. Now, I'm going to show you something. If I don't just want this to go straight up, okay, and I want to give it some movement, right? If I want to go in, okay, what I'm talking about is like on your amp, if you're making an amp 4 or something, if I want to build in here, the profile goes in, then I need to put the coil on the inside edge, right? I'm putting it on the inside edge, kind of a diagonal, so that the vessel starts going up and in. If I want it to go wider, then I'm going to put it on the outside edge. You guessed it, right? So I'm going to actually go a little wider on this one. I'm going to use the double coil. I can get away with that a little bit. So again, I'm going to score, but I'm going to score right on that outside edge of the vessel I'm building. Okay? And then I'm going to score my coil as well. Go back, get it again. Okay, now I'm going to add my slip. I'm going to work a little faster. Right, I'm going into demonstration speed. Some of you guys might take your time a little bit more on this. Okay, so I'm going to add this to the outside edge. Go all the way around. So again, I'm going to do that diagonal cut. So I'm holding it, I'm cutting diagonal here. And where it's going to match up, I'm going to cut diagonal. And I just kind of eyeball that. I don't have a trick for measuring that. You might have to trim off a little bit more. Always err on the side of giving yourself a little extra than coming up too short. All right, so now I have this thing where it's like overhanging. And the inside, there's like an underhang. So I'm going to have to really focus on how I smooth this out. Now, one trick you could do when you do this sort of thing is you can score and smooth the outside as well. I find that really helpful. So I'm going to use this little rib here so you can see how that works. And I'm going to score it first, which allows me to kind of drag some clay where I'm going to want it to go. So I'm just making some texture and moving that clay around a little bit. Looks like that, right? All the way around. And I can do that to the inside as well. I'm just kind of scoring it up, giving it some texture. And then when I go to smooth it out, stand up here, I'm going to drag that clay down again, and I can apply a little bit of pressure from my thumb on the inside so I can push it out a little bit and get that nice movement I'm looking for so it starts flaring out. And for sure, working on canvas makes this a lot easier, so you're not making a giant mess, right? I don't care if the canvas gets wet, it's going to dry off later. Almost all the way around. Ta-da. Right, now I can work this a little bit more. You can always go back and pinch it a little bit, right? And work the sides. But right now we're just working structurally. And again, I would do the same thing for the inside. Okay. Again, lots of options with coils, lots of ways to build with them. Again, you can change whether they're going in or out, so you can change the profile of whatever it is you're making. Super versatile. You can use them for handles again, right? But definitely work on practicing rolling the coil out. That takes a little bit of practice. But once you get it, there's so much you can do with it. So that is coil building. I'll see you guys next time.